Yeah, I think we're just waiting for a couple more at this end, and then we'll fire off.
Webcast is running. Broadcast.
It does. Thank you very much. Who's Kate Wilson?
Press that. Okay. So that makes.
Should we give another minute or two? Afternoon all, we're just waiting for Henry, our youth MP, to arrive, so we'll just, if it's okay with you, just give him another couple of minutes. He's been walking the hallways of Westminster recently, so he might have some knowledge we don't know about. Did he really? Jolly good. Don't steal Henry's thunder. Shall we make a start, and perhaps when Henry arrives, we can just fit him in. He'll hopefully be here. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Isles of Scilly Children's Trust Board meeting. Sorry for the slight delay getting started. Could I just go around the room and around the video link to do introductions, please? Perhaps starting with Keith on my right.
I'm Keith Grossett, Senior Officer for Children's Services.
Fran Grottick, Vice Chair of the Council of the Isles of Scilly.
Aisling Khan, Director of Children's Services for the Council of the Isles of Scilly.
Jo Yates, Head of School, or Head of the schools on the Isles of Scilly.
Tracy Smith, Coordinator for the Isles of Scilly Parent Carer Forum.
Really, School.
Sarah Shave, I'm here today as Hallie's mum.
Ali Shade.
Okay. Yay! Lynn Plummer, Children's Social Care Manager.
Darren White, and Police Sergeant on the Isles of Scilly.
Thank you very much. And Joel Williams, Lead Member for Children. And we got...
Penny Ben Howard from Health Watch.
Thank you very much.
And Brian,
Thank you very much. And could people joining us remotely please introduce themselves?
Alison Cook. I'm currently on secondment Cornwall Council as a Service Director for Children's Community Health. I am still employed by Cornwall Partnership Trust, but I'm on secondment to facilitate the transfer of public health nursing in the next few months.
I'm Brian O'Neill, Consultant in Public Health. I'm standing in for the Director of Public Health, who at the moment you have down as Caroline Court as the Interim Director, which needs correcting, and Steve Brown is the Deputy Director of Public Health, working under Virginia Pearson for Devon, who is our Wellbeing and Public Health Service Manager.
Hello there, Miles Topham. I'm a Police Partnership Inspector, and I'm covering for Superintendent Matt Longman, who's been called away on an operational matter, I believe.
Hello, and I'm Kate Wilson. I'm a Team Manager at Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly Youth Offending Service.
Thank you very much. I think that covers everybody. Thank you for taking the trouble to join us this afternoon. Are there any declarations of interest people would like to make on the agenda? Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chair. I represent the local authority on the Cornwall Partnership and NHS Trust.
Any other declarations of interest, or shall I take sign? Penny?
I've got 2 grandchildren in the school here.
Thank you very much.
My daughter's a teacher at the school.
And we've just been joined by Henry Dean, who's our local member for the Youth Parliament. Give you a chance to have a drink of water, Henry, and get sorted. Could we move on to agenda item 3, which is minutes of the last meeting, please? Are there any factual inaccuracies people would like to comment upon? We don't tend to do matters arising, but it was raised in Health and Wellbeing Board that we had this morning that it might be useful to do it. So if there are any pressing matters that people have picked up from the minutes of the last meeting that they'd like to raise any queries on, please feel free to. Even if I get my wrist slapped later, I'll take that chance.
Joel?
Yes.
Alison here. I wasn't at the last meeting, but I noticed in item 9/18 on page 6, it notes that I've been seconded to the council, which leaves a gap for children's health provider role. I am still the manager for all the health, for the public health nursing.
Okay.
That's health esteem school nursing. But I am no longer responsible for CAMS.
So yes, the issue is that we don't have anyone from CPFT on the board now.
Yeah, so
that was the actual point, not that we didn't have any representation around provision of health services, but it's just that we probably need to think about a CPFT representative, identify someone to come to these meetings in the future.
Would you like me to take that forward for you?
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. I was going to discuss this with you at lunch, but you stood me up.
I know, I'm sorry, I think I was popped off, I think. But yeah, the flights were all cancelled, unfortunately. So yeah, I'll take that forward for you, Ashley.
Thank you very much, Alison. Any other comments from around the table or around the video link? In that case, I think we can accept the minutes as approved. Which brings us on to item 4, and a very warm welcome to Hallie and to Henry, who I think are going to give us a little overview of what they've been up to recently. Is it okay if we do ladies first, Henry, and invite Hallie maybe to give a little commentary on what she's been up to?
Can I just say, as part of an introduction, that I asked Hallie and her mum if they would be willing to come to Children's Trust Board today, because I think we spend a lot of time looking at academic achievement and what goes on in school, but actually we don't often celebrate achievements outside of school. So the reason I asked Hallie to come along is because I think she's achieved something pretty phenomenal during the summer, and I've asked her and her mum to come to talk about it. I'm not sure how much Hallie's going to say. But if that was a shake of the head, by the way. But Mum might help out as well in explaining what it is that you've done. Yeah, is that okay?
So in the summer term at Five Island School, we had a visit from some people from the Maiden Factor who were doing a promotion of the work they were doing in regards to promoting girls in education, and they came up with some statistics that were quite shocking about the number of girls that weren't actually able to access education in many countries still. So Hallie saw that assembly. She was there. They showed a video of their work. And a few days later, she decided that she wanted to do something to raise a bit of money. So, okay, yep, absolutely fantastic. You know, what do you want to do? We're quite good rowers in our household, and it just seemed right that she was going to take a challenge on regarding rowing. But she wanted to do something a little bit different, so decided to row solo from Sampson back to St Mary's in our punt. And there's been a couple of articles written about her. There's been a lot of praise on the Maiden Factor Facebook page and other social media. She's had messages of Hallie inspires rather than just Maiden inspires, coming back to her about how inspiring it's been for someone of 11 years old to do something like this completely off her own back. So we're extremely proud.
How much money did you raise? Over £1,000. So I think Mum said it's nearly £1,500 now.
Yeah, by the time they, all came in, because I had people saying, "Oh, I must give you some money." Yeah, it was near 1,500. And so they came back into school. One of our friends, Jo now, who's got strong links to the islands. Actually, she used to work over here, keen sailor, and she awarded Hallie a trophy, actually made from part of the original Maiden. Because they're just about to set off again for another 2-year world tour, again promoting this Maiden Factor work and promoting education for girls. So yeah, just brought a couple of things in. Do you want to show them around, House?
Well done, How far is it? Do you know how far it is from Sampson to here? How far is it?
It's nearly 3 miles in the end.
So it's nearly 3 miles, and how long did it take you?
So just about 50 minutes.
50 minutes.
50 minutes, so you did it in less than an hour then?
Yeah.
Yeah? Well done. And did you get tired?
A little bit.
So when you got tired, who helped you to keep going?
Like, there was a lot of people up there. Like, my mum's friends and, like, this support boat thing.
Yeah.
That, like, did a loud, like, horn thing at the end, and I finished.
Okay. So did you need a lot to eat to keep you going? Yeah. Well done. Well done.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of money to raise. Well done.
Could you tell us what happens to that money? Does it sort of go now to help education somewhere, I assume?
Yeah, we linked it to their Just Giving page, so it's going towards the promotional work that they do around the world now. So,
brilliant.
yeah, get more girls back into education, or starting education.
Thank you for taking the time to come and see us today, Hallie. It was great to hear your story, and good luck with everything in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's up to you, you can stay or go.
And Henry, I think you've got something to update us on as well. So if you'd like to go ahead and tell us all your developments, that'd be really great.
I have got an entire presentation if you need it.
Oh, if you've got a presentation, I'd...
Could be tricky.
It's okay, I can just read.
Are you okay to talk from it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
Fine.
really great. You're making us all look terrible. None of us have done a PowerPoint. And we're paid to be here.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Okay. So, I was very, very lucky enough this year to go into the House of Commons and debate the top 5 issues that over 1 million young people from all across the country chose in the Make Your Mark ballot this summer. The top 5 issues were Vote 616, put an end to knife crime, improve mental health services, equal pay for equal work, and let's tackle homelessness. So we travelled the journey in a tiny pink Fiat 500. My dad wasn't impressed. And inside the chamber, we debated the 5 topics. I unfortunately didn't get to speak, but I stood up for 4 out of 5 of the debates. And there were some very good points made by MYPs from all over the country and sometimes outside. So the results, so we were asked to vote for the top issues. I think one of them, so you could choose, one of them would become the Devolved campaign and another would become the All UK campaign. And this year, Vote 616 and Let's Put an End to Knife Crime became Youth Parliament's 2019 priorities. So I'm not sure yet how I'm going to promote these on the island because I think knife crime isn't really a problem. But it was very interesting in the Make Your Mark ballot locally. Put an end to knife crime was one of the top issues that people locally over here chose, and it was still pretty high up in even places like the southwest of England. So just because it doesn't happen over here that often, we still care about it. Which is, I think,
good, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think Vote 616, I think it affects us all. And I think I'm still not sure how we can do that. I'm not sure the council would like a rally outside the town hall or anything.
Vote 612, Henry.
Exactly. I'm all up for voting rights at birth, to be perfectly honest. Why stop at 16?
True.
But yeah. And I think, Mrs. Yates here, you were asking if we could do a new article in the newsletter.
Definitely.
Yeah, I haven't been asked to do that yet.
And I can't believe nobody's asked you to put anything in the newsletter. I think we should have a regular feedback from...
I've done that once. I've written one article before or something, put one article in, and I think that's it. I think it was when I was elected.
So we need to get you more regularly sharing that information with parents and not just students.
Because I generally email all the students every time.
Yes, you do.
The thing immediately comes in. What do you call it? Make Your Mark ballot, that's it.
Yes.
So yeah, thanks.
Is there anything which is a bit more local to home? Any issues you'd like to raise with us around the table today?
Not really.
Okay.
I think from around my peers, I think a lot of the things like school changes rather than local changes which is part of my work as a student council representative. Although I'm not sure if you're aware, we turned the student council board into a little more of a youth council, a local youth council, which we were asked to be done by, I think, the regional leader. So.
Amazing.
Thank you very much. Has anyone got any questions for Henry on his work?
I think just to say as well that Henry came to the scrutiny panel for the Children's Safeguarding Partnership and made some really good contributions to that as well. I don't know what you thought about it. I know it was a really long meeting and you probably sat there for a long time listening to things that were quite boring, but hopefully you found that useful, and I certainly think that the people who came to that found that useful for you to be there.
Yeah, it was a really good challenge without something crazy. We really like challenge, so thank you.
I think I may have said previously, and I didn't do it. I would love it if you could perhaps come to one of our full council meetings, and before this sort of juncture in the meeting, perhaps explain to some of our other members what you're doing, what you're standing up for, those sorts of things. So, absolutely. So I will nag myself to see if we can get a slot that suits you and suits us, and you can come along to a meeting and just set out your key aspirations. Okay. Thank you very much. Would you like a round of applause as well, Henry? Again, you're both welcome to stay for this first part of a meeting, and feel free, if you wish to chip in to participate as much as you wish to. But I think we're moving now on to item 5. I think because of weather, John hasn't got over, but I know quite a few people in the room were at the quality assurance feedback panel, so we might be able to hold a formal bit in the next meeting, but perhaps we could just do a touch on the quality assurance feedback report that.
Okay, so we had the meeting. It's a new format this year, so we did a written submission in advance for questions. Well, a written submission in advance, then we did a PowerPoint presentation which answers each specific inquiry area, and then after each section we were asked questions. So we were in here for about 2.5 hours. And like every other agency represented on the Safeguarding Children's Partnership, the Isles of Scilly is seen as the entirety of its partnership. So it was local authority, health, police, young people, voluntary sector, childcare providers, school. And I haven't had formal feedback yet, but afterwards, Jim Pearce, Commander of Cornwall Police, said impressive as ever. And he doesn't say things like that unless he thinks so. So we obviously there'll be areas of further development because that is the nature of the work we do. But I was incredibly proud. I was really proud of our young people because they were so articulate and didn't necessarily agree with our points of view, which just shows that you're creating a safe universe for children to do that. Everybody was very supportive of each other, talked a lot about multi-agency working, but also really clear about areas for development. So I'm hoping John will get us something back sooner rather than later. And as soon as I get it, I'll send it around by email anyway, but we will obviously present it formally at the next Children's Trust, and any actions out of it will then go back into our development plan. So we've got that continuous cycle of improvement.
Thank you very much. That certainly captures the sort of feedback I was getting from within the room, but I don't know if anyone else had any comments they'd like to raise on that. Okay, so it sounds like we will probably keep this as an agenda item for next meeting when John has done his written report, and potentially it can go to full council as well at some point as well to brief the wider membership. As it was a verbal report, there's no recommendation, so I think we can move on to item 6, which Brian and Alison, I assume, are going to take the lead on.
Yeah. Thank you, Joel. As you are all aware, the decision has been made to formally transfer the health visiting and school nursing, public health nursing services, and a small speech and language service which already operates within the council, not the full speech and language service, just a small specialist service, to Cornwall Council, and the transfer will take place on the 1st of April 2019. There's probably around 250 staff who will be transferring, so it is quite a large undertaking. In relation to the Isles of Scilly, there are 2 staff who will be transferring. It is unfortunate that I wasn't able to make it over today because I was intending to engage them in a formal consultation meeting, but clearly we will rearrange that. The formal consultation started on the 9th of November and it runs for 45 days, so it finishes on the 23rd of December. There's been a number of engagement events on the mainland. I'm very conscious that the two members of staff on the islands haven't been able to join us in those, but there is a lot of information on the Cornwall Partnership Trust website with all the frequently asked questions, all the papers, all the slides. So I have pointed the two members of staff towards that, so they're, although they haven't had a face-to-face meeting, they won't be missing out. With regards to the Isles of Scilly, I don't anticipate any changes. We are not changing the service that is going to be delivered. It's just purely the employer. So the staff will still continue to deliver the service that we currently do. Brian might want to chip in a bit about that in a moment. Otherwise, we're just looking at our processes, all the usual things that go on with TUPE around accommodation, IT, information governance, etc., etc. There's a whole extraordinarily long spreadsheet with all the issues. As the two members of staff on the islands will be working for Cornwall Council in the future, we will be changing the IT structure because they will have to get to the Cornwall Council network, but I will engage as and when with the appropriate, possibly with you, Keith, actually, for some of those aspects going forward. It is, although it's the middle of November, I'm very acutely aware that actually after Christmas, we will rapidly move towards the April deadline. And it will also be useful to catch up with you, Aisling, around some of the details and how we can include the staff in the engagement going forward. I don't know that there's anything else particular to discuss, but we're not going to change, we don't anticipate changing the staff base on the islands. As I say, it's purely the employer. Did you want to say anything about this specification?
Yeah, the only thing I can say is actually is that we've been developing the specification based on the national model, and as we develop this, we are engaging with Aisling to make sure that we get the voice of the Isles of Scilly in there. So Aisling has responded once or twice quite keenly on this. We're very keen to make sure that you enjoy the same level of service and degree of integration that you've experienced so far, so we want to safeguard that. And we're working together with Children's Services here in having an outcomes framework-based service so that we look at how we can work together to achieve those outcomes rather than sole responsibility. So I suppose we're learning from the Isles of Scilly that way around.
I think that's a really good point, because actually some of the emphasis for moving was about how we integrate our services better with services in the Children's Cornwall Council Directorate, particularly around early help, early years, as well as social care. But of course, we do have a very different model on the islands, which we've had for many years. So Brian is right. We're kind of lagging behind in some respects to the good service that we've jointly delivered on the islands for many years. I don't know if there's any questions from anyone.
No, although it might be an opportune time. You mentioned Keith, and I think it's no great secret in the room here that Keith is moving on to pastures new. But I think it's an opportunity just to thank him for many years of hard work. So contacts may be changing in the near future, Alison.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to hear that, but congratulations, Keith. But yes, I'll liaise through Aisling. It's probably the most sensible way.
Let's do that. I was just going to ask Alison, Brian, with the changes, will the service be any more robust or less robust for local children and parents than it was before? In terms of if one of the two members of staff was unable to perform their functions for whatever reason, are there potential backups in place so that Scilly is well supported?
I would say that, yeah, that's it. I would say that we don't intend to make any changes in that. We do attempt to try and provide backup to the islands, particularly in our out of term time, because I know one of the members of staff only works term time only. I would hope that we continue those arrangements. But again, if there's any circumstances that change, we will work to make sure that you always have provision on the islands, as we've done as best we can up till now. I know that the two members of staff link very closely with the staff in locality 1 in the Penwith area of Cornwall, in the west of Cornwall. So we would want to continue that. But yes, we will, of course, make sure that you always have a provision in the future.
Thank you very much. And what sort of timelines are we moving towards? When do you think everything will be signed, sealed and delivered and all the TUPE arrangements have taken place and the new world starts?
Well, the formal consultation, as I said, ends on the 23rd of December. Cornwall Council will give Cornwall Partnership Trust official notice 12 weeks prior to the transfer, which is the 7th of January. Then we, in earnest, start sharing all the information on staff. The business transfer agreement is sent around for comment. All the legal processes then start. So there will be a huge amount of work between the 7th of January and the 31st of March. But the 31st of March is the deadline. There is no way of extending that, so all the processes need to be complete by the 31st, and then the new service will start on the 1st. So we're doing quite a lot, we're trying to be organised and do a lot of the preparation work in advance. So we've got formal consultation meetings with staff now, then the council will be doing some consultations with staff in January. We're going to be sharing equipment with staff in March. So I anticipate that there will be additional visits over to the islands a couple of times after Christmas, between Christmas and March, so that we can make sure that the two staff with you are not disadvantaged in any way. You'll probably see us more than you usually do.
Well, you're always very welcome. Thank you for that update.
Okay, but again, I'll link with Aisling with the dates and all the rest of it.
Thank you. Any points anyone wishes to raise with either Alison or Brian? Nothing from this end. Thank you very much for the update there. And again, there's no formal recommendation. So I think we can move on to agenda item 7, which is the One Vision update report from Aisling.
Okay, well, I hope I do a better job now than I did at Health and Wellbeing Board this morning. Well, I didn't even realise it was on the agenda. But anyway, One Vision, as you know, it's the health and social care integration strategy for the Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, particularly relating to children and families, which does also then link into the Shaping Our Future agenda. There's 4 of us from the Children's Trust Board that sit on the partnership board, myself, Tracy, Penny and Joel. I'm the Vice Chairman of the exec group, and we have actually found the meetings really useful so far, which you don't always say about these meetings. I think it's been a really, really worthwhile event, and I think we're making more than our fair share of contributions. Wouldn't you say, Tracy? So a couple of things I want to talk you through. Firstly, all around the ADM idea, and then thirdly about what actually is One Vision achieving. So the ADM, that's the alternative delivery model that Cornwall Council were exploring, where they got some innovation money from the Department for Education to look at an arm's length integrated children's services company. That's now been put on hold, but because of the opportunities described by Alison earlier with the transfer of public health nursing, they're going to be looking at an integrated children's services directorate, which actually is pretty much the kind of way that we work anyway. So I think that will again offer us opportunities, because even though we have our own statutory responsibilities as a unitary authority, if we are working with teams who are also integrated in a similar way, I think that would be of benefit. Then in terms of what actually has been achieved, so there's sort of 4 key areas of work. One is the whole neurodevelopmental pathways. As you know, there's a real issue with the waiting list for assessment for neurodevelopmental issues. Significant number of children waiting for a diagnosis, and there is currently a very long waiting time. They've set up a few things to try and mitigate that. It's not necessarily having immediate impact on those numbers of children. I think the key message they're trying to get out to parents and to professionals is just because you're waiting for the official diagnosis, don't not do a service. So they're looking at all of those children and making sure that they're getting some kind of provision, because actually some of those children won't get a diagnosis, but they still have need, and those families have needs, and they're not sleeping, and school's not going well. And so it's all about making sure you provide a service. We do have some children waiting for that diagnosis, but I know through audit and conversations with the team that they are getting a service as if they did have that diagnosis. The need is being met rather than the label. There's also, they've done some work, some twilight sessions for parents whose children are on that list, so that they can describe what the offer might be while they're waiting, what they're trying to do, which I think parents have found really, really useful, because then they're kind of still having some interaction with the service. And I am going to try and see how our parents can go to a twilight session on the mainland and see if it can be brought here or done by Skype. And then CAMS is obviously a huge issue. There's been quite a lot of good results there. As you know, we have a Bloom model on the islands, which is all about building capacity to support children with emotional resilience issues. Through that arrangement, we've managed to reduce children accessing specialist CAMS services from 18 to 3 actually over the last 2 years. And that model is also working in Penwith, and it's so successful that whole Bloom network model is being rolled out across Cornwall. So we've got some learning to share. I think one of the key things we've got to make sure always is that we do have that CAMS psychologist regularly attending, who can ensure that any psychological formulation or ideas is fed into the group. But that, you know, in recent meetings, that's been incredibly strong. The third element, the family hub idea, is I think of particular significance to the island. So that is all about creating hubs which are a single front door for families to access all sorts of services. So that might be a physical location, but it's more likely in Cornwall to be a kind of virtual one. On Scilly, we probably could do both, and we work very much like that as a team. So one of the things we're going to do in the new year is do a workshop with parent carers, service users, to design that family hub and what's it going to look like and what's great already and what isn't. And I think the key bit that will come out of it is how do we on the islands have access into the specialist health services, and it's building up that knowledge of what the specialist health services are, because every time we go to One Vision we pick up a new thing that we maybe should be getting access to. And if that's the case for the Director of Children's Services, I don't know what it's like if you are 8. So one of the things that Tracy picked up, because she's always trawling things, she found out about sleep workshops, which is a universal offer for children, for families with children with SEND. And she said, when's ours? So I then emailed that. It was going to be next spring, but we've actually managed to get it in 10 days' time. We've got someone coming over for 2 days, and we're making really good use of that. So we're doing universal services for parents, and particularly for those at key transition points, so about to do exams, year 11 and year 6s, where sleep might have gone a bit out the window. We've got a professionals meeting on the Tuesday morning, and we're going to invite adult social care as well, because actually the tips you get will apply from 0 to 99 and beyond. And then also there will be the main focus will be the Monday evening session specifically for parents with children with SEND, and one-to-one sessions will be available as well, both for the child and the family. And I think, you know, the more we can find those things, the more supportive people will feel. We've also managed to access some capacity funding training around self-harm. And this was through Joe doing a bit of digging as well, going, where's ours? Around self-harm, around trauma-informed practice, around child development. So it does feel like we are more in the middle of things than it ever has done, don't you think, Joel? And I think that for me is what One Vision is really important for Scilly, that we just don't feel isolated and an afterthought.
Thank you very much. Any questions or queries people would like to raise in relation to One Vision?
Yes, Joel, can I just add on to Aisling's very good synopsis of what's going on? Within the ICSD, we are looking at two of the issues that came out of the recommendations with the Cabinet were around identity for the new service, as well as enhanced governance, which I think Aisling has probably covered about strengthening the One Vision partnership. But I was just thinking that for the identity, as well as having an identity for the whole service, for the whole of Cornwall and Isles of Scilly, maybe it's something we want to think about on the Isles of Scilly around our children's services, because I am conscious that it's fragmenting in a way in respect of different organisations now being involved instead of just Cornwall Partnership Trust. But I think it's a way of strengthening about how we all work together, particularly if there's new people who will be coming to the islands. I don't know what you think about that, Aisling.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think that would be really good. But the thing is, I always love those things, identity and branding, and I always try not to, because we need to actually design the service before I do all that. But yeah, I think that would be really, really strong. And I mean, I think there's also an opportunity. We were talking at Health and Wellbeing this morning about, because I keep talking about One Vision and being about children and shaping our future about adults. And it's not meant to be like that. But to be honest, when Shaping Our Future, and I got called up by Jackie Pendleton on that, but in her Shaping Our Future update, it doesn't include anything about One Vision. And I think, and we're not integrating those two programmes of work very well in how we report it. And I think on Scilly, we have an amazing opportunity. So I think when we think about the family hub, I think we could evolve that over time to be, like I said, with the sleep workshops, 0 to 99, because particularly on Scilly, children live within extended families. So I'm quite, I don't know, I think there is definitely something about identity for Scilly, about how we're going to do it slightly differently elsewhere, just to suit the needs of our community.
I agree, because I think the principles need to be the same across the service, but actually the way we deliver services and the needs on the islands are quite different to those of the mainland. So we need to, I think, have our own thoughts around that.
Yeah.
So could that potentially be something you, through the executive group, give some consideration and thought to?
Well, I think the thing with as I understand it with Family Hub stuff, that is absolutely sort of delegated to local leadership, isn't it, in those various localities to get on with it. So I think we absolutely have, as a local team here, the absolute permission to say this is what it's going to look like. When nobody's thinking there's any more money, it's just about how we're going to organise services and how we're going to connect with each other, and how, for example, when we have visiting professionals, how we're going to make sure that they come and see us. Are they going to be co-located? We can work all that stuff out ourselves, and then we will just tell everyone what we're doing. I don't think there's a requirement to get it kind of approved or anything, is there?
No, I think we just demonstrate that we're working towards the principles of a combined service across the whole area, but how we deliver it is very special and slightly different and silly because of the right reasons.
Yes.
So, yeah, I agree.
Exactly. And so, and because we've already established the Bloom model, I mean, Bloom gives us a kind of blueprint for what the governance might look like if you're going to look at all need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
And I think we've already touched upon it. It would be nice to think that before our next Children's Trust Board, the Family Hub workshop has taken place. So again, it gives a bit more context to things. We got till about March, April time next year. Okay, thank you very much for that update. Item 8 on the agenda is the SEND programme update report.
Okay, so we met for the first time this morning as a SEND strategy group to look at how we deliver on improving SEND processes and delivery and standards across the islands of Scilly, Isles of Scilly. The inaugural meeting was attended by representatives of Liz Cahill, Cornwall Council, Council of the Isles of Scilly Social Care, and the school. And we basically looked at the SEND development plan, which is an annex to your paper today, and identified how we could improve on that and take that plan forward. to ensure that we're actually making a demonstrable impact into standards and performance for all things SEND. So the plan itself is 25 sides wide, and we accepted that we'd never hit all of those actions simultaneously. So we prioritised the lines of work, primarily being around the local offer and how we rehash the local offer along the lines of not necessarily having a all singing or dancing website, but having up-to-date and relevant content on the lines of health, education, social care and community support. And we also looked at how we might prioritise preparing for adulthood as a key activity, and also broadening out the scope of our conversations to include all young people with SEN rather than those on a plan specifically. So in your paper, you've got my report plus the development plan. Bear in mind there's a slight amendment to the paper in paragraph 1.8. As much as parent carer forum do not now have support from Cornwall Council at all. They're Cornwall Parent Care Forum. They're a fully fledged, independent, free-flying organisation representing the parents of children with SEN on the Isles of Scilly. And it was noted in the minutes from last time that they have an outreach link to children, and that's not the case.
We do outreach work with families,
Yeah.
so that's in signposting to other organisations that might support them, but not direct with children.
Not direct work with children, no. And so the report is as you have it before you. Couple of important things that are now well established are SEN liaison group, which is a practitioner level conversation that we have with the school, which has been very effective, and Parent Care Forum, which has been very effective in looking at a practice level improvements and processes, which has kept SEND on to the fore. And also we have co-recruited with Cornwall a Preparing for Adulthood and internship coordinator as well to work across Cornwall's colleges, which is progress, which is great. Yeah, so happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Sorry, Keith, I've got further amendments to this. Under the co-production section on page 19, the issue is, are children, parents and young people involved in reviewing services on offer? The Parent Carers Forum only represents the parents' voice, not the children's voice. Further down on page 20, again, does the local authority have a mechanism for routinely and directing involving children and young people in decisions about services separately from parents? We don't actively seek the voice of the child, we are the voice of the parent. And then also just the point below that about have a mechanism for engaging the widest possible group of children and young people. It gave an example of via school council and youth parliament. I think the crew meetings that school are holding are going to be key to getting that voice. And that's all. Thank you.
And one of the upshots of this morning's group was that we were going to rehash the plan as well. So we'll be working together to review that.
Keith, can I just say the numbers, it's a really petty thing, but when you've said your total number of children on the islands between 0 and 16 is 271, I'm just fairly sure, having done some report, I've got governors next week, that we've got 271 children on roll in school.
Right.
And so there must be at least one more than that. And I'd have thought more than that.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's all. So just go back and check your numbers, and I will go back and check our school numbers too. Yes.
Any other comments from either around the room or from people joining us virtually? And I was just going to conclude by... Oh yeah, go ahead, Brian.
No, so no comments from us.
Okay, thank you.
Just in case you couldn't see the head shaking.
And I was going to say, I guess there's some sort of requirement from the likes of myself and Fran as councillors to recognise that with Keith leaving his role, there could be a capacity issue. So we just need to be mindful of that. We've obviously had a useful meeting and discussions today, so we don't want to let too much momentum slip. But I thought it was a useful meeting earlier where we recognised aspects which are good and aspects which need some improvement. So that was a helpful start. What recommendations are we just? So yeah, I think we've got one recommendation, and I think we as the Children's Trust Board are noting the current activity levels with regard to SEND. I think we now have an opportunity for verbal update from partners on anything relevant to the work which they're participating in. We start with Darren, perhaps.
I think from a policing perspective, we very much continue to move forward, working with our partners, not wanting to steal Lynn's thunder on it, but recently displayed what I would say was a very collaborative approach to a young person in mental health crisis. And I'd just like to emphasise, really, I think it was the communication and the collaborative approach and the planning that was put behind it, I think made it run as efficiently as what we could hope. And we've subsequently debriefed that incident as well, and there were learning points that come out of it, even though it did go well. And that's something that we'll move forward with collectively.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Joe. Just to say that we were expecting a visit from Department of Work and Pensions who wanted to come and do a focus visit. Unfortunately, Sarah's a wheelchair user, and I've learned just how undisability friendly ours of Scilly is. So we've put it on hold and hoping that March and April, following discussions with the steamship company and various transport providers, she might be able to come over and do it again. It was embarrassing. And then Adele has just messaged me the Sendias focus group that was for this evening. She's going home. She's been sat at the airport all day. So that will be postponed to early December. And then just to say I'm very excited. Next week, I'm off to the National Network meeting, and I'm going to be attending workshops with the Department for Education, SEND Department for Education themselves, NHS England, SEND, Department of Health and Department for Work and Pensions. And they've got 5 focus areas, so I shall bring news back and any learning that I glean from there. And otherwise, parents, it's coming up to Christmas, I won't hear from them until January. Thank you.
The only thing I wanted to update the board on from a school's perspective is that I know that Justine Hoskin came and presented to you last time, the one I couldn't come to, and she actually managed to give her workshop to the school finally on the 5th of November because travel was working, and it was really, really good professional workshop about professional expectations and staff behaviours. We could have spent 2 days on it, frankly, and it's never enough time. But what we did have was a stronger sense of how professional allegations work, what that means for people. It's all about breaking down the barriers so that people feel able to talk about what's going on and have those conversations and sort out the thresholds of when we're reporting and when we're not. We've got staff concern forms we've introduced now so that it's in the same way that if we're worried about a child's safety or a child's behaviour, we'll report that. We've now got a formal mechanism for reporting the same sorts of thing from adults that are working with children in the school community. And I've already had some good conversations, as is always the case. When you have something like that, you tend to get a little burst, a flurry of conversation, and it's been really, really helpful. I'm not saying that means we're perfect, because it doesn't, but actually I think we are very aware as a community, and possibly that hasn't been the case in the past.
Anything else from you, Henry, you'd like to add? Okay.
I'm sorry that we've been in meetings with you all day. But this is a piece that is relevant to children's services. So we are going to be shortly joined on the islands by a senior mental health practitioner for adult services. Obviously, that's 16 plus in some instances who will work very closely with children's services. And obviously it's relevant to children's services because of the impacts of mental health issues on family life, but also the interlinks between substance misuse. Often if you have a child with SEND, that can cause emotional issues. So it's going to be really good. It's a much needed service, and it was co-designed with service users who gave their time to talk about some very private experiences. And so me as a commissioner and the NHS commissioner were both very impressed, and we have designed a service around that. So it's all about early intervention. It's trying to prevent fly-offs. It's about having someone who can deliver therapeutic work. It's a very new kind of post. We haven't ever done it anywhere else in the country, so it's a bit of pioneering work. So I've managed to get funding for the next 2 years, so it gives us a bit of stability. And if we can prove it works, then there's another conversation about that being a permanent part of our multidisciplinary team. Very exciting. We'll do a big press release because it's been a long time coming.
I'd just like to echo everything Aisling said. I think we've been waiting a long time for this, and I think it will be a really good use of funds. I think prevention is always very, very cost effective. It's difficult to quantify, but I'm sure it's going to be very, very good. And secondly, I'm looking forward to hearing about Tracy's trip. I think that will be very exciting.
Keith? We've got Brian, Helen and Penny over in the public gallery. Anything you'd like to add? Okay. We had a brief conversation. Nicola Stinson from the local authority came to our Health and Wellbeing Board this morning and gave an overview of a project which is about to start. The local authority have secured a shade under £200,000 from Sport England for a Families Fund project on Scilly, which is very much about encouraging those children, young people and families who aren't overly physically active at the moment to take part in new activities, channeling them into new opportunities. It's still very early days. Potentially it could be an agenda item for our next meeting of this forum. But as I said, £200,000 over 3 years to start quite an exciting project. So look forward to hearing more about that.
Joel, thank you. I would just like to say that Susie Taylor from Active Scilly and myself have been working together collaboratively because we've got a piece of that funding for our families, initially starting with swimming sessions, but myself and Susie are going to be getting together to actually have a programme over the year to get families doing activities together, but in the hope that the young people will then find the confidence to go on to universal activities. So it's exciting.
Excellent, thank you very much. Colleagues on the mainland, have you got anything you'd like to feed back to us?
Hi, it's Brian here. Just listening into your interesting conversation about your money through Sport England, just to say that you're tying in with certainly the physical activity strategy, where we'd like to see 50,000 more people physically active and about reducing sedentary behaviour. And it's just really that in shaping the way that your money is being spent, we need to make sure that there's a sustainability element of it in how we continue to reduce sedentary behaviour and improve activity. Yeah. That's it.
Alison, Miles or Kate, anything you'd like to feed in?
Miles, no thank you.
And just from the Youth Offending Service, I just wanted to pick up on something that Henry raised a bit earlier on around knife crime and the interest in concerns about knife crime on the Isles of Scilly. Just in relation to development in the youth offending team, we are starting to pick up on knife crime and also sort of gang-related activity. Similar to yourselves, it's not a big issue for us here on the mainland at this time, but we are in conversation with other areas, and Newton Abbot, for instance, have been in touch with us and sort of warned us not to be too complacent really about these issues and not to assume that this isn't happening. They had some behaviours that were fairly low level and that professionals were concerned about amongst the group of young people, and it very quickly escalated to a gang-related activity where professionals were starting to notice that suddenly these young people were all wearing the same sorts of hoodies, the same hats, etc. And so, yeah, that's something just to be aware of, really. So we've recently identified a lead for knife crime. We've also identified a lead for county lines within the Youth Offending Service and the wider GTY Adolescent Service. So we're going to be doing some work and looking at how we can directly work with young people around those issues.
Thank you very much. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Joe. I'm just aware, even though I don't manage the CAMS service anymore, that they're still actively progressing with the CAMS transformation, which is moving on really well. I know that they'll be refreshing the plan again at some point soon if it hasn't already gone through. And Ashling's already mentioned about the Bloom model rolling out, which is good news for Cornwall. But I don't think there's any other updates apart from that.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for all those. I think that concludes part one of the meeting. We've got one part three report, which we'll pick up on in a minute. I think that, thank you very much for attending, Henry. I think we all enjoyed hearing what you had to say. I think we'll stop recording.